it titled Germination. Germination, the sprouting of a seed, usually after a period of dormancy. Borrowed from the French germination, from the Latin root germinationem, a sprouting floor or budding. In our backyard, behind a little house in a cul-de-sac in Brassard, on the south shore of Montreal, there's a raised bed that extends from the wall of the house towards the woods. It has the shape of a reflective pool of water. This is a garden, the garden patch my mother cares for, surrounded by a sea of red bricks. I am 3 years old, holding onto my mother's leg, and we bend together. She shows me how to dig a little hole in the soil. She picks a seed from the bucket and buries it in the hole and covers it. It becomes a little mound of black soil. Every 4 inches, a mound appears, black, shining with minerals blinking in the sunshine as the early afternoon sun hits the side of our house. In each mound, I imagine I bury a little bean or a small treasure. I also know early on that whatever my imagination buries, gold or diamond ring or small beloved creature, each seed is a loving thing asking to grow. I am filled with wonder. From a very young age, my mother Louise has watered the seeds of my own garden, the seeds of longing for stories. Some are light with tendrils of joy, some do ache and weighed heavy on my chest. Some have pierced through the hardened walls of my heart and broken it in pieces. I write my first story on a family summer road trip to Mexico City when my family moves to the coast of Mississippi. I'm 4 years old and will start kindergarten in the fall in Pascagoula. My parents are relaxed, my mother's family and friends are visiting. We are gathered at a round table in the secluded garden of a restaurant, surrounded by low brick walls and wrought iron lace fences with palm trees and lush plants with red, orange, and yellow flowers. My 2 brothers and I move from lap to lap. I sit on my Aunt Francine's lap. At one point, I ask for paper and pen to make drawings. My mother nods, encouraging. She wears a sleeveless summer dress. Her hair is puffed out and short around the ears. I feel my mother's loveliness, her youth, and how she places her warm hand on my back. She smells herbal and flowery. When my small brothers and I say something, the adults pause and includes us in their conversation. It is not hurried. It's warm and humid. It's timeless. Could you write me a story? I ask my mother, and she invites me to write it instead. Yes, she says, yes, you can. I nod and repeat, yes, I can write a story. And after filling a couple of pages of lines in pseudo-cursive writing with lines and dots, I show them to my mother. She asks, do you want me to read the story you wrote? I nod, my eyes big with expectancy. She reads the story, a story of a beautiful family traveling on the road, stopping at a restaurant to talk and drink delicious beverages with the little children, where the children write stories. In awe, I ask, you could read my story? And this is what I wrote, really? And she says yes, the adults around are listening and smiling. I did not know how to write and read then, yet my mother understood, made sense of my yearning for wholeness before I did, and reflected back to me. It is inconceivable that this family, my family, should later experience shattering with my parents' early divorce, the suicide of my mother, the suicide of my Uncle Claude, and many years later, of my Aunt Francine, on whose lap I wrote my first story. 3 suicides like a small pod of 3 whales dying on our shores, no longer impossible to ignore, tangled up in fishing nets, emaciated and malnourished. But this day, as we travel in that long ago summer of a road trip, ship, we are one content family, and my mother believes in my writing. Her first lessons teach me to trace the loops, the bow, the lines, and placing points by making small little pointy dots on the sheet. This is how I learned to become my mother's daughter. When she reads my story written with all the T's and the dots and the loops, it's in French. The first sounds rolling out of my mouth as she reads my story back to me are French. 2 young years after our road trip, we returned from our life in Mississippi to the eastern coast of North America to our house in the suburb of Montreal. I am back in my mother's garden, surrounded with borders of flowers and the sounds of her words in French. With scissors too large for my small hands, I'm snipping long dangling haricot yellow and green and pulling carottes, careful to pull them long and ready, like my mother showed me. The lacy green foliage of the carrots resists, then gives in softly with sweet smells and bring out bright pointed orange shapes from the black moist dirt. I'm old enough, and my mother asked me to gather the harvest for our meal. I have the trust of my mother nearby, waiting for me to bring back the green beans and the carrots she will cook for dinner. Like seedlings after a long, cold winter, my yearning has grown when I finally return to my mother's garden.